I would like to address this general concept of can I play given a rule set or textual rule set that has this or that, not particularly play, even anti play quality. But can I? Can I? I get this question a lot. And I know you haven't specifically asked me this personally, John, about this game, but I think the question's been hanging in the air a lot of the time for you and a bunch of others. Let's see if I can make any sense out of that. Okay, um, analogy time. Right. A person who has been told uh, to write, but you um, have been given an empty pen. So, like a ballpoint pen, but there's nothing in it, and there's no paper, and you're supposed to show or be or do something to do with, writing, go ahead. And the instructions basically say just pretend. Don't really write, look writerly. Be, a writer type person, and the people around you or the people participating will be amazed. Don't. And by the way, when you need to give them something to read, here, just give them this. You don't really have to write. So the person being writing inclined goes, well, screw this, and runs off and fabricates, ink from some natural source somewhere, and comes back and fills up the pen, and, looks around and finds papyrus or something, and writes on that, and indeed writes. So yes, they can write given what they were given. They ignored the fundamental instruction, which was don't write, give them this. They said, well, screw that. Now, given these things I'm holding, what else do I have to do to make it to so that I can write? And that's kind of what you're talking about, I think. Um, First of all, the idea is that when you say, or when someone says, well, I used the rules and I could do it, actually, I don't think that you are. I think that the fundamental rule in the text, anyway, was don't do it. And here's a bunch of shit to play with and sort of cosplay that you're doing that. And to ignore that rule is means you're just not using the rules. After that, you may be taking some point and piece instrumentation and repurposing it toward your ends, and in which case your ends and these instruments then do become rules. But that's a little bit like saying, to keep going with analogies, and this one a little bit more direct, I'm handed a rule book which basically says, here are a bunch of points to construct characters. Here are, these rules for two dice. When you want to do something, you roll these two dice, and they generate this thing. And no, I'm not picking on any particular system you may be thinking of. There are hundreds of role playing games out there that use two dice. That's why I chose that. And you take these two dice and you roll, and you look on this little table for a success or failure. And one could say, all right, well, everything else in this text is completely anti play. They kind of boil down to, well, this is how you pretend when you are pretending to do resolution. And instead, if you say, well, actually, I do want to do resolution, and I'll use this because they're handy, um, that's not using the rules they gave you. It's superficial similarity to what they gave you is misleading, and it has to do with the confounding of system for meaning some stochastic and probability based device deep inside a system. And just because, you're using two dice and they have these two dice and you're using this table because they put this table on a page, doesn't mean you're using their system. It means you're stuck with that empty pen, and you've done a ton of labor, a ton of contextualizing, a ton of addition that you may not even be aware of, so that you do, in fact, have a functioning pen there. And so I think it is well worth considering that once you say, well, I'm going to eliminate all the context, and by doing so, eliminating quite a few other systemic connections that are scattered through that text, that are not as easily noticeable that you're eliminating them, taking this bit that's in there and then doing a remarkable amount of creative orientation of when it is used and what happens when you use it, that the text as a whole just simply does not acknowledge, support, or even seem to comprehend. It's not that you're using their rules. Um, they are, at this point, whatever's left over in that text is just scattered raw material for your game design. Oh man, should I go on with ridiculous analogies? All right, this one might be a little different. Um, one is to make music, and one has been handed a stick and a rock. And I will go so far as to say that a human being inclined to make music is perfectly capable of genuinely making music with this stick and this rock. Now, crazy, and this analogy is starting to be a little self-supporting. I'm not sure if it really works. But say the people who gave you the stick and the rock were pretty much uninterested in music whatsoever and had really no idea in anyone making music. They would have much rather given you the stick and the rock and have you cavort about pretending to make music while they just hit play on, the boombox or whatever that's sitting there. Well, you say, screw this, you kick over the boombox, you're not interested in the boombox, and you take the stick and the rock, and you're a musician. And you in fact can make music with it. It may or may not be something that you really would prefer to do. You might prefer, your preferred instruments, but you're fine with this because you can do it because you want to make music. And at that point, actually, that analogy isn't half bad. At that point, are you using the instrumentation that they have given you? In one sense, yes. And in another sense, not even a little. So I tend to favor that second interpretation, that no, you're not using the instruments they gave you. You basically have this flotsam and jetsam left over after rejecting what they gave you. And you yourself are now perfectly capable because you came here to do this thing and you are capable of it. You don't depend on anything anyone has given you for the capacity to make music, to write, or to role play. So, with any luck at all, this is in support of everything you wrote, but giving you credit for what you have done and giving no credit whatsoever to the notion of, well, okay, Ron, system does matter, but this is a crap system, but can I do it? Can I use it? My answer is no, you can't use it. What you can do is role play with something that you find lying around.